Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. This week we got a pretty sweet one. We are going to Standard one more time to play a super spicy Reanimator deck built around Ever After, the new double reanimation spell from Shadows over Innistrad. So as you can see, $100 in the paper world, 79 ticks on Magic Online. Anyway, let's break it down. So this is the whole idea of the deck. What we are trying to do is get a Dragonlord Kolaghan and a Dragonlord Atarka in our graveyard, and then resolve an Ever After. Ever After returns 2 target creatures from our graveyard to the battlefield. Each of those are zombies in addition to the other types, whatever. Then Ever After goes on the bottom of our graveyard, also whatever. The key line of text there is return 2 creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if those 2 creatures are a Dragonlord Kolaghan and a Dragonlord Atarka, what ends up happening is we get 14 hasty evasive power. Plus, we have Dragonlord Atarka that deals 5 damage and also has trample. So essentially, we're pretty much guaranteed 14 damage on the spot. We swing in with both of them. We can kill any blockers that could be in the way with Dragonlord Atarka, or take down an opposing Planeswalker, or just get rid of whatever annoying creatures our opponent has around. So we impact the board and deal 14 damage, and then we put our opponent in a position where either they're dead immediately, if we've gotten in one Dragonlord Kolaghan hit earlier, have some other creatures on the battlefield, whatever, or they have to deal with both dragons on their next turn, or they will die the following turn to either one of those dragons. Plus, even if they do deal with them, we likely have the Kolaghan and the Atarka back in our graveyard, and the next Ever After is going to close out the game for sure. So that's the main combo of the deck, Ever After into both of those creatures. So the rest of our deck is pretty much devoted to filling up our graveyard and also controlling the board. So this is our, let's fill up our graveyard, try to get our Dragonlord Atarka and Dragonlord Kolaghan into the graveyard. Mindwrack Demon is a key one. Not only does it have flying and trample, but it mills 4 cards when it enters the battlefield. So it's a big evasive threat on its own. It's a good blocker on turn 4. It's above the curve, especially with flying and trample on turn 4. Plus it mills those cards, so it gets us closer to pulling off our combo of reanimating Dragonlord Kolaghan and Dragonlord Atarka. And in our deck, the Delirium downside, where you lose 4 life at the beginning of your upkeep, if you don't have 4 different card types, at least, in your graveyard, usually isn't a downside. Most of the time, we naturally will have at least 4 card types in our graveyard, just because we are so focused on getting cards into our graveyard. So the rest of the Fill Up the Graveyard package are 3 Vessel of Nascencies and 4 Gather the Packs. These ones, you look at X number of cards from the top of your library, so either 4 with Vessel of Nascency or 5 with Gather the Pack, and you get a card or 2 in your hand. Vessel of Nascency in some ways is better because it can hit an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker, so pretty much any non-instant or sorcery, which is fine, so we get something in our hand, and then the rest go into our graveyard. Gather the Pack only hits creatures. Our deck actually doesn't have that many creatures. It's got the 4 Mindwrack Demons and then the 6 Dragonlords, so a lot of times we're only getting 1 creature or sometimes 0 creatures, but that's fine. Sometimes we will hit a creature, usually 1 creature, but then we can also just dump things into our graveyard to set up the reanimation. And remember, you don't have to take anything with either of these cards. There's definitely times when we're trying to set up our Ever After, we'll reveal a Dragonlord Atarka to Gather the Pack, and we will decide that we would rather have it in our graveyard than have it in our hand, and that's perfectly fine. We can fail to find and just dump it into the graveyard anyway. And then Tormenting Voice, I was worried that one of the ways we could run into trouble is kind of flooding out with our Dragonlords in our hand, because Mindwrack Demon, Vessel of Nascency, Gather the Pack, they don't do anything for cards already in our hand. They're good at putting cards from our library into our graveyard, but if we just draw multiple Dragonlord Atarkas, we either gotta wait till we can cast them, or discard to hand size or something. Tormenting Voice takes care of this problem, lets us discard any card from our hand, and we get to draw 2 cards in the process. So not only is it a way to, for only 2 mana, put a Dragonlord Atarka from our hand into our graveyard, a Dragonlord Kolaghan, hand to the graveyard, but it also helps cycle through our deck, find more removal, find more Ever Afters, and so forth. And then 4 Corrupted Graphstones. This one is really interesting. This is our plan B. It looks like a really bad mana rock, being 2 mana, entering the battle tapped, and only adding mana if you have cards in your graveyard, colored cards in your graveyard. But in our deck, we're very good at filling the graveyard, so we almost always have all 3 colors from Corrupted Graphstone in the early parts of the game. And this is a way we can just ramp into a Dragonlord Kolaghan, Dragonlord Atarka, our big things, much quicker. So I think it's pretty sweet in our deck for that reason. Because sometimes we do just want to naturally cast those things. Plus, if we mill it, it's an artifact in our graveyard for delirium purposes with Mind Rack Demon, which is also a fringe benefit. So I've been pretty happy with how Corrupted Graphstone works. And then the rest of the deck is just disruption and removal. When I first built the deck, I thought maybe we would use an actual mana dork, like Deathcap Cultivator, as our ramp spell. But then I realized I wanted to be playing Radiant Flames and Languishes, and I didn't want to be killing our Deathcap Cultivator, whatever mana dork we played. So I figured that using Corrupted Graphstone was also a benefit there, since it wouldn't die to those mass removal spells. So in our deck, none of our creatures die to Languish, none of our creatures die to Radiant Flames. So when we resolve one of them, it's always a one-sided board wipe. Grasp of Darkness, just to make sure we can kill something in the early game. The one thing about our deck, it is fairly slow. We will be able to win the late game most of the time, so it's a matter of getting there, and Grasp of Darkness is a good way to make sure we get there. Duress can get a counterspell out of our opponent's hand, get a Declaration in stone or something that could potentially stop us from winning with our huge dragons after they're reanimated. And then mana base wise, a bunch of budget duels: Cinder Barrens, Foul Orchard, Timber Grove, and Llanowar Waste. And then the Evolving Wilds in basic land package. In the sideboard, this is our control matchup package. So we got a bunch more discard in Duress and Transgress, Read the Bones to help refill our hand, find more pieces, and then Greed Warden is a really good way to get something back from the graveyard. We can also reanimate it, which is nice, but a lot of times, surprisingly, we're using this to get back a Duress or a Read the Bones, something like that, just to grind out advantage, because if we run into a dedicated control deck that can kill our dragons pretty easily, we have to kind of go long against them and get rid of their removal spells before we win. Then we have our Kill Flyers package. Rending Valley and Clipwings are mostly for Archangel Avacyn, but they also work against Dragonlord Ojutai. Clipwings is very good at killing that. Dragonlord Slumgar, any big flyers. And Rending Valley is also good against like white X-Human decks, which are still pretty popular, killing a Thalia's Lieutenant or whatever threats they happen to play. And then a little bit more removal / sweepers. We got the other 2 Radiant Flames. So if we run into White Humans, Bant Company, 4-color Rights, we can bring in the Radiant Flames. Super good in those matchups. And Virulent Plague, good against tokens. Also pretty good against like the combo builds of the 4-color Right decks that are looking to use Brood Monitor to go infinite. So it's fairly helpful in those situations. Anyway, that is Ever After Reanimator. I think the deck is pretty spicy and pretty sweet. It is definitely really powerful. Like, we get to play a lot of really powerful cards. We have a lot of good removal. The biggest downside is it can be a little bit slow, and we don't have that many threats. With 3 Kolaghans and 3 Atarkas and 4 Mind Rack Demons, it is possible that our opponent can 1-for-1 us out of the game, essentially, because those are our ways of winning the game. Especially if their removal can exile. So that's what I'm mostly scared of, is Anguish Making and things like that. Because if they're just going to kill our creatures, we can always reanimate them again. But if they're exiling our creatures, things can get kind of rough. The good news is, there's not much graveyard hate in Standard still. So much like last Standard season, where Rally the Ancestors kind of ran rampant, because there's no really safety valve to deal with graveyards, it's pretty much the same now. There's just not a Relic of Progenitus or a Tormod script or anything, so we're pretty safe just to dump things into our graveyard and get them back. So the challenge is keeping our creatures alive long enough once they get on the battlefield to actually win the game, and surviving the early game so we can get our 6-drops, 7-drops online. So that's the challenge of the deck, but I think it's pretty sweet, and I think it's pretty powerful and pretty playable. I've definitely been happy with how it turned out. Anyway, Make sure to check out the website, mtggoldfish.com. Got decks, prices, metagame strategy, pretty much everything and anything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed our After Reanimator budget Magic videos, make sure to click the like button and the subscribe button that are about to pop up on the bottom of your screen. That'd be a huge favor to us, and it keeps you up to date on all the latest and greatest in video content from mtggoldfish.com. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the videos, and I will talk to you soon.